The night smelled of hot stone and tallow, a breath held in the dark throat of the Red Keep. Eddard Stark stood at a narrow window, his palm on cool iron, and watched the city lights gutter and blink like a field of fireflies. Down the slope, the black ribbon of the Blackwater caught the last of the moon, bright and treacherous. Wind brushed in from the sea, tasting of salt and old nets and the faint, metallic tang of the south. Somewhere in the palace, a door thudded softly and boots moved with purpose. Then silence again, the way silence wraps itself around a place where men wait for something to begin. A candle burned on the table behind him, stuttering now that it had eaten most of its wick. Its small flame made a pool of honeyed light, bathing a scatter of papers. Robert's hand scrawled across one, broad and careless even in his weakness. Another, newly penned by a clerk, had been sanded and folded again until the creases held their own stiffness. A third was still damp where his seal had broken and been pressed anew with the dire wolf of House Stark. The wax had a faint, sweet, resinous scent. He breathed it in and told himself it was courage. He told himself it was preparation. On the far side of the table sat a goblet with a swallow of wine still clinging to its curve. It was a dark wine, almost black in that light. He had not touched it in some time. He did not think of poison. Or rather, he thought of poison in the way a man thinks of the mouth of a sleeping wolf, with respect, but without any intention of testing the teeth. He went back to the table and read the words he had already memorized. The letters swam, not from drink but from the fatigue that comes when a man has spent too long fighting what he does not wish to fight within himself. He could see Robert as he had last seen him, pale and spent and smelling of blood and herbs and the dust of a road. He had put the quill into Robert's hand and watched it scratch his name, Protector of the Realm, until the rightful heir come of age. He could still hear the rasp in the voice, the jest that wasn't wholly a jest, just don't bloody kill me, boy. His friend had laughed then coughed until the bed seemed to shake with it, and Eddard had held the cup for him and thought, we are playing a game we do not know. He had thought, I will not play it. And yet here he was, the board laid out in shadow and candlelight. The door opened without a knock and Ser Renly Baratheon came in like another candle had been lit. He had the air of a man who wore worry like a garment but preferred not to be photographed in it. He shook rain from his shoulders and made a show of wiping his hands free of any trace of it. The emerald cloak he wore caught the light, jewel green and clean as a spring leaf. He could have walked into a feast. He set his jaw and met Eddard's gaze, and for a breath their careful sense of each other, those weeks of circling like hounds called to heel, fell away to two words neither wished to speak aloud. Now then, it's begun, Renly said softly, or it will if we let it. I have men ready at Maegor's holdfast. The watch is in place. Janos Slint? Eddard asked. Renly's smile had an edge, the sort of thin shine a blade takes. Gold. Oath. A whisper from a master of whispers. He'll stand with us if you lead. Gold, Eddard repeated, but without scorn. In Winterfell a man's bond was his word, and that word was a thing you could leave by the hearth at night without fear it would run away. In King's Landing, bonds turned to coins and clinked and slid across tables, and if you did not take them up someone else would. He had learned that lesson with costly slowness. He set his hand to the paper again. The wax seal caught the candlelight, a small captured sun. And Ser Barristan? He asked. A brief hesitation. He is a knight, Renly said. He will not strike a woman and children within their chambers. He will not stand with us either, but he will not break his oath tonight. Not tonight, Eddard said. Barristan Selmy was a name that had rung in stories even in the snow-silent north. The old knight would keep his honor like a man keeps a banked fire. It would not warm you over much, but you could trust it not to burn the house by accident. And Stannis. Renly's mouth tightened. Stannis is at Dragonstone. I have sent a rider already, but ravens fly faster than men. He will see the right of the law, whether he will see the need of the hour. He let the sentence die the way a man lets a light go out because he's already halfway to the door. I have sent the raven as well, Eddard said. He did not speak the name of the boy who slept in rooms heavy with lemon scent and rich hangings, nor of the girl with her soft brown eyes, nor of the small solemn one with the cat he'd seen trailing as if attached by an invisible string. No matter their father, no, he corrected himself, especially because of their father, their mother would set them on the throne and call it rightful with a voice as proud as a trumpet. He could see Cersei's cool mouth curling. He could see how her love would murder a kingdom if it gave her a crown for her son to shine with. "The bridge," Renly said, "will need your authority for the Holdfast Guard." Eddard nodded once. He took up the paper with the broad signature and tucked it inside his breast. When he lifted his head again, the air in the room had new shape. The night had ticked forward by some hidden measure. The candle leaned, guttered, then steadied. "Very well," he said. "We go." On the way to the door, he paused with his hand on the latch and looked back in case there was something he had forgotten to carry with him. Iron, faith, his father's voice, his children's faces. There was only light and shadow and a ruined swallow of wine. He had never imagined that his life would be divided by something so small as a closed door. The corridors were narrower at night. Servants' torches made small. Islands of glow in which faces appeared and vanished again between steps. The keep seemed to breathe. Here a guard shifted with a creak of leather and declined to meet his eye. There a woman in a rumpled shift slipped along a wall like a piece of the wall that had remembered it was human. Footsteps echoed oddly, coming from ahead, then from behind. Renly walked beside him, slender, all grace and calculation in a velvet husk. Once they passed a niche where a statue of some long-dead Targaryen queen watched them go with a smile so faint that it seemed carved into the stone from inside. Her hands were folded on her lap as if everything in the world had been arranged as it should be, and she had only to sit and wait for it to continue. They met Varys near the door to Maegor's, a plump silk shadow with slippered feet. He held his hands as if he had just been drying them and forgotten to finish. "My lords," he murmured, and his voice made the title sound like a secret rather than a rank. "So late for such a walk." "The night is cool," Renly said, "and some men wear heat poorly." Varys's eyes glittered in the torchlight, soft and amused. "To be sure, I found a little cool air of a night can be very good for the skin." He dipped his head toward Eddard. "Lord Stark, Ser Janos Slynt waits at the foot of the bridge as requested." "I have not requested him," Eddard said. "No," Varys agreed, "but I thought you might have wished you had. I took the liberty." There are men who move the world as if they are pushing a cart. Varys moved it as if he were smoothing a wrinkle in a drape. Eddard wanted to be angry with him and found he was not. There would be time for anger when there was no more time for action. The bridge to Maegor's Holdfast was drawn up more often than not. Tonight it sighed down on groaning chains, led by a tower full of sleepy guards who looked suddenly awake. The Holdfast itself hulkied in the night, a fortress within the fortress, squat and ugly and as well built for a siege as a clenched fist. Its stone was darker than the keep's, and it seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. Janos Slynt stood with a half-dozen gold cloaks and a nervous set to his mouth that he covered with officiousness. In the torch glow his cheeks shone. He bowed a little too deeply. "My lord Hand," he said, half awe, half calculation, half something else that might have been fear. "Men are not good at halves when there are so many of them to hold. Your sealed order was received. The watch has barred the lower gate. No man enters or leaves Maegor's without your leave." Eddard glanced at the seals dangling from Slynt's fist. One of his own, one of Renly's, one he did not recognize until Varys, smiling, said, "The Queen's Chamberlain is indisposed." The wax seal of the Chamberlain's office was there to be seen, and what it said was, "Everything is in order, nothing is amiss." He supposed that was true enough. He nodded once. "You will take men and secure the Queen's presence," he said to Slynt, "without noise, without harm." He looked the man in the eye until the bluster smoothed out of Slynt's face. "Without harm," he repeated quietly. Slynt swallowed. "Without harm," he echoed, and lifted his hand to signal. Gold cloaks peeled off and vanished into the black mouth of a stair. Somewhere up above a dog barked once, offended at something that would not concern it by morning. Renly turned his head toward Eddard. "I have Loras and 20 of my guard at the far corridor," he said. If the hound is there, he will not wish to test that number. He is brave, not stupid. The King's Guard are stationed at their posts. Lord Commander Selmy is in the White Sword Tower. Ser Boros and Ser Meryn attend the Queen in turn. The man tonight is Boros, Varys said gently. Ser Meryn's digestion disliked the lampreys at supper. It is always unwise to displease a lamprey. Boros, Renly said, and did not bother to keep the contempt from his voice. Good. He will fold like pastry if pressed with a knife. Eddard thought of white cloaks and the weight of vows and the way honor could be used like a cudgel. Boros Blunt's honor had never been heavy enough to bruise anyone but himself. Hold him, he said. Do not strike unless he strikes first. And if the boy grandly proclaims himself king, Renly said not unkindly, and commands us all to die in defense of his kingliness, then we will tell him the law, Eddard said. We will tell him of his uncle. The law? Renly repeated, as if tasting a strange fruit. Very well. They crossed the bridge in a thickening quiet. Torches hissed. The walls of the holdfast rose around them with the intimacy of a closed hand. Inside, the rooms were too warm and smelled of salt baths and the leftover perfumes that linger in alembics and hair. Tapestries watched them go with their stitched eyes. The silk underfoot muffled their steps. A servant carrying a basin flinched at the sight of them, and the water gimleted, letting go its slow ring. At the upper corridor, the men Renly had stationed stood in two shadowed ranks. Steel at rest but near enough to hand that it looked natural there. Ser Loras Tyrell had a smile that made young ladies reckless and old lords wary. It was not on his face now. He nodded to Renly with the gravity of a boy taking meat from a spit for the first time and cutting it clean. At his feet, a length of chain lay coiled as if waiting for a particular throat. The shield he had set against the wall gleamed faint as a pool, its lilies silvered under the torch's wash. Eddard remembered his daughters then, the way a bruise remembers pressure when it's touched. Sansa had spoken of Loras as if the world itself had composed a song and made it into a person with hair. Arya had rolled her eyes at that until they nearly one day would have rolled out of her head. He had nodded and smiled and thought, songs are dangerous, then chided himself for it. Let a girl have her so. If she cannot have her mother beside her. He swallowed. He told himself he would see them when this was done. A door opened at the end of the corridor and Ser Boros Blunt stumped out, scratching under his breastplate. His face slack with the heaviness of a man who had been trying not to sleep. His bleary gaze blinked once, then again, then focused with a slow dawning of the situation. The hand he'd raised to scratch fell as if arrested by a sovereign commandment. For a heartbeat, the corridor was a painting. Steel, white cloak, emerald, the hand in brown and gray like a winter tree shedding its leaves. Then someone exhaled. The picture moved. My lord, Boros began, and Loras stepped forward, light, almost lazy, the edge of his hand just barely touching the rim of his shield to bring it within reach if needed. He could have been a dancer except for all the ways he wasn't. Ser Boros, Eddard said, you will stand aside for the king's protector and for the realm's safety. No man is to be harmed. No one. Boros's mouth worked. He looked at Eddard as if trying to remember what sort of man he was supposed to be in front of such a one. The queen, I am sworn. You are sworn to protect the royal family, Eddard said in even tones that did not clip because he would not allow them to. You will do so tonight by not raising your sword. The boy is with her, Renly said, soft as water over stones. And the little one, no one wants blood. If you rouse them with shouting, you will risk cutting them with fear. His eyes did not waver. Boros looked at Loras's hand near his shield, at the silent ranks behind him, at Varys who was merely a plump moon in the corridor. He licked his lips. I will not stand aside, he finally managed, with a sturdiness that would have been commendable if it had not also been confused. I will accompany you. Renly tilted his head. Eddard nodded. You will accompany us, he agreed. You will see that no harm comes to the queen. He could promise that much if men kept their wits. He could not promise what the morning would demand. The door to the queen's chamber opened on the feather-sweet scent of a bed that had been warmed and was now cooling, and a breath of something sharper, orange flowers, cinnamon. Something clean and expensive and purposeful. Curtains were half drawn back. Lamps burned low. A footman startled in the antechamber, then remembered his training so precisely that you could see him put each piece of it in place like armor. Bow, step back, eyes to the floor, mouth closed. Cersei Lannister did not rise when they came in. She was composed in a carved chair by the window, one leg crossed under the other, a book in her hand that she was not reading. She wore pale silk that pooled around her like milk spilt carefully on a plate. Her hair had been unbound and brushed to a lion brightness. Joffrey was awake as well, in a shirt that cost more than most men earned in a season, his chin lifted just so. Tommen slept and would not have slept through a war. He had a cat cradled in his arm, and its paw moved in dreams like a twitching leaf. Myrcella's bed was curtained. The shape of a small, still girl lay within, and for an instant Eddard saw one of his own daughter's knights, with the ribbon on the pillow and the worn doll face down as if exhausted by love. "My lady," Eddard said, and left any title at the door. "By order of the king's hand and as protector of the realm, I place you under guard. You and your children will be moved to secure apartments under the custody of the crown. By morning the small council will convene. We will send for Lord Stannis." A small silence followed that, in which the lamps made their own little voices heard. Then Cersei closed her book and set it on the table with the care one gives a delicate thing that one means to smash later. "Will you?" she said. Her voice did not rise. "Send for my good brother as well? He would be welcome to laugh at the comedy." Renly took one step, respectful as a pin, and said, "The hand has the authority, Lady Cersei. I advise you to come quietly. It is late. The children are asleep." Joffrey's face burned. "I am not asleep," he said, "and I am not a child. I am the king." He looked to the Kingsguard and found Boros. "Ser Boros, arrest these traitors." Boros looked at Eddard's face, then at Renly's, and then at those behind them. He cleared his throat. "My prince," he said, and paused while the word hung in the air, fragile as spun sugar. "The hand acts with treason in his heart," Cersei interrupted. She rose. It was like watching a blade stand upright all by itself. The motion of her gown was the only movement in the room for a moment. "He breaks into my rooms in the night with armed men. He speaks of custody as if I were a thief." She smiled then, a thin, beautiful cut. "Tell me, Lord Stark, how the North does things. Do you bring wolves into nurseries?" "I bring the law where it belongs," Eddard said, and hated that his voice was tired, as if he had walked too long. He took a breath and made it firm. "I must ask you to come with us, my lady. Your safety is our concern." "My safety," she repeated. She went to Joffrey and put her hand on his shoulder. Her fingers were pale and strong. "You bring me safety like a farmer brings a torch into a thatching and says, 'Here, we will see better by this light.'" She bent to Joffrey and murmured so that no one but him heard. He flushed. He wanted to shout, but something in her tone held him. Varys drifted softly toward the girl's curtained bed and stood just near enough to be present without being a shadow on her. His eyes moved once toward the sleeping boy with the cat. Loras set the coil of chain at his ankles, quiet and ready to be not at hand. Janos Slynt was standing very still, as if afraid to offend the air. Eddard took out the paper, unfolded it, showed the seal, and read in a voice that filled the room without force. When he was done, the silence returned with a different shape, heavier, the way a room feels after someone has closed a window halfway. Cersei regarded the parchment with disdain that might have heated iron. "You should have learned, Eddard Stark," she said almost gently, "that a piece of paper burns. You should have learned that earlier. It would have spared you this small humiliation." She moved, faster than he expected. Her hand lifted as if to snatch the document to shred it, and Ser Loras was there as if he had always been there, one hand out, palm up, not touching her, an unspoken barrier that was all courtesy and all threat. "Do not," he said very softly. She paused. She was not a fool. She had called him a boy once at a feast and watched his mouth tilt and had filed away the tilt of it as if it were a hunting trail. Now she saw the lines at the corner of his eyes and recalculated. "The realm is not your toy," Eddard said. He felt the word realm in his mouth as a plain, hard bread. It sustained him because it was hard. "And your children are not bargaining counters. They are children." Now she smiled with sorrow that was almost believable, and that was what made it dangerous. "Everything is a bargaining counter to those who do not wish to keep what they have with their own hands," she said. "But you are different, are you not? You wish to be good." Her smile vanished. "Goodness is a dress men like to see on their enemies." "I wish to be just," he said. She tilted her head. "Justice and law are different dresses with the same seamstress. They never quite fit as one wishes. Do not expect me to admire your tailoring." "Enough," Renly said. He did not sound angry. He sounded as if he had put away the fine things and taken up a plain knife. "Lady Cersei, please." Cersei looked at him long enough that one might have thought she would never stop. Then she turned to the curtained bed and drew back the silk. Myrcella lay pale and breathing with the evenness of a child who believes the world safe. Cersei put a hand on the small warm brow and left it there for a count of 5, as if laying a blessing. When she straightened again, she said, "If I scream, there will be blood. If you push me, there will be grief. And yet, if I go with you quietly, there will be grief too. It is only a question of whose grief. Have you chosen whose, Lord Stark?" "Yes," he said. The word weighed as much as the sword he was not wearing. "The realms over one houses." She blinked slowly, once. The look she gave him then, for a flashing moment, contained warmth twisted into something like pity. "You think that makes you noble," she said. "I think it makes you cruel." She stepped away from the bed. "Very well. Let the Stark protect me. I will walk. Joffrey, take your cloak." Joffrey stood rigid. "I am the king," he said stubbornly, the words like pebbles in his mouth. "No one will." "Boy," Renly said, and some of his brother's voice was in it then, the roughness of the hunter who knows when to pull and when to wait. "There will be time enough to say it or not say it in the morning, in the throne room, before the lords and the gods. Tonight you will not make yourself a target because you wish to play the lion in the dark. Put your cloak on." Joffrey's eyes moved from face to face and found no purchase. He snatched the red velvet cloak from the chair with an angry sound and flung it around himself. It caught on his shoulder and he struggled briefly until Cersei freed it with neat fingers. She did not look at the men. She did not look at the paper. She looked at her son's mouth and all the things he might say with it, and made none of them. They went out in a cluster that was not quite a procession and not quite the leading of captives. The cat leapt down from Tommen's arms and threaded between Eddard's boots with the insolence of a creature that has lived its entire life in rooms where men have debated weighty matters and fed it cream at the end of them. Tommen woke and blinked and began to cry without sound until Cersei smoothed his hair and he leaned against her hip, stunned and drowsy. Myrcella came meek and white-faced and tried not to fix her gaze on anyone. Joffrey's mouth was a line. Ser Boros tried to look everywhere at once. Varys drifted. Janos Slynt walked like a man walking a ridge with a bad drop on both sides. At the bridge, a shape uncoiled from shadow and resolved into Sandor Clegane. The hound, steel-teeth mask bearing its frozen sneer at a world it had been brought into without its consent. His eyes shone small and pale in the torchlight, and you would have expected a drunkenness in them because the night was long and full of things that men put into themselves to make it shorter. But his gaze was sober. He took in the queen, the princes, the armed men. His hand shifted on the hilt of his sword. "Dog," Joffrey said, turning toward him like a plant bending toward sun that does not warm but burns. "Cut them to pieces." The hound did not move. "You'll get your pretty hands sticky, boy," he said. His voice was flint against flint, and if sparks fell no one picked them up. He looked at Renly's men, counted them, counted Loras, felt the shape of battle in his wrists and did not like it here in a corridor with children's quiet breathing filling the spaces between men. He spat a neat little gesture. "In the morning," he said to Joffrey, In the morning you can make all the speeches you like. Tonight you'll do as the lady does. Walk." Joffrey looked as if he were going to be sick. The hound's eyes flicked to Eddard. There was no friendship in them. There was the tired understanding of one man who has spent years doing what he is told, and another who is about to spend the rest of his life wishing he had not told anyone to do anything. They crossed the bridge. They put the queen and the children into apartments that had once held a princess of a house that had burned. The walls were thick. The windows looked over gardens where night lilies nodded their blind faces and left a breath of sweetness that made the air feel clean and dishonest. Eddard posted his men. He posted Renly's men. He posted gold cloaks where Renly wanted his men and Renly's where Varys had suggested gold cloaks. He did not tell himself that he was clever. He told himself that he had tried. He sent a boy running to the White Sword Tower with an invitation for Ser Barristan to meet the Hand at dawn. He sent another to the tower with its rookery, where birds slept in a thick-walled gilt of feathers, and told the maester to wake a raven for Dragonstone and put his letter on its leg. When the last of his orders had been given and the air smelled only of oil and stone and the faint, slow pulse of flowers outside, he went to the window and stood looking out. The city lay, breathing the way a beast breathes when it sleeps after it has fed. He thought of Winterfell, of the clean cut of cold against his face in the mornings. He thought of his sister and of Robert laughing in the snow. Two young men with their blood up and no idea how much blood they would lose before the laughing ended. He thought of Catelyn. He thought of her hands, small and sure. He thought of Robb sitting a horse for the first time and of the way Arya had stood with her feet apart the day she had first tried to balance on the wall walk in a north wind, daring it to knock her off. He thought of Sansa reciting the names of flowers with a seriousness he had not known could be given to flowers, and then he thought of Sansa's face when a young lord had bowed to her at a feast, as if someone had told her that heaven had written her address wrong but had decided to deliver it anyway. Renly came to his shoulder and said nothing for a little while. The two men stood like signposts at the edge of something that had not yet decided whether to become a road. "Tomorrow," Renly said finally, "there will be noise." "There always is," Eddard said, though he did not mean it to be clever. "We will have the law between us and it." He did not mean that to be clever either. "And the law is a sword," Renly said, as if naming a dog. "Let us hope it does not cut the hand that wields it." He left then, with Loras at his back, and men quietly arranging themselves like chess pieces put away for the night on a board that had not yet learned morning exists. Varys, when Eddard turned, was gone. A little emptiness where he had been, like the space left when a woman lifts a jug from a table and the ring of damp under it slowly fades. Eddard slept briefly and badly and woke before light with his jaw aching from a dream in which he had been clenching his teeth and trying to hold a door closed while people he loved pushed on the other side because they thought something good was there. He bathed standing in a dish filled by a sleepy boy with a copper jug, and he shaved himself with a razor so sharp it had been honed on a stone that had belonged to his father and his father's father. He wore gray with a clean shirt and a new stitched badge. He ate bread with honey and found he could taste neither well. The bread was good. The honey was good. It was his mouth that was wrong. He sent for his daughters to be brought to his solar. Sansa came first, with a maid who had the eyes of a nervous horse. Sansa's hair shone. She had dressed herself with care, as if she were going to court, with pale blue sleeves and a necklace of fine work. She came in and curtsied and looked at him with a look that had always undone him. The belief that the world would be as it should if only her father said it would. He stood and kissed her brow and told her to sit, and she sat but leaned toward him as if the air there would be more honest. "Father," she said. "What is it?" "The servants are all whispering. Jane says she heard men running in the night." "They did," he said. "The queen and her children are under guard. They will be safe. In a little while I will meet with the council. We will send for Lord Stannis to come to the city. Until then you will keep to your rooms. If you need to walk, take Septa Mordain and 2 guards with you. Not one." Her eyes grew wider and wider until he wondered whether the blue would crack like ice. "Joffrey?" she whispered. "He is safe," Eddard said. "And because the truth is a stubborn thing that will be heard," he added, "he is under guard." She rose as if someone had pulled a thread inside her. "He is the prince. He is the queen's son," Eddard said gently. "We will know more soon. Sansa." He waited until she looked at him. "You must do as I say. You must not write to anyone. You must not go to any of the queen's ladies. If someone comes to you with news, you will send them to me." She swallowed. He could see her struggling to order her thoughts into something that would make the world fall into its old shapes. "Father," she said finally, "if Lord Stannis comes..." She did not finish. There are some songs a girl knows but cannot sing because no one has yet explained to her which notes are allowed. He put his hand over hers. "If Lord Stannis comes," he said, "the law will be read. The council will decide what must be done. I will see that you are safe." Her lips trembled once. She did not let them tremble twice. "Am I to see Joffrey?" "Not today," he said. She closed her eyes like a jar being fastened and rose again, curtsied again, and went out, her back straight in a way that made him proud and sad in equal measures. Arya came after, late because the world was always full of corners she wanted to look around. Her hair was a knot that would have frightened a comb. She had a bruise on her knee that had flowered overnight into something of which she was secretly proud. She stood with her feet too far apart and glared at the floor as if it had done something to annoy her. "Septa says men were running," she reported. "She says to pray. Praying is good." Eddard said, "Running is sometimes good too." He saw the light move in her eyes. "But not you." She tipped her head. "Not me. Not you," he said. "Not today. You will stay with Septa Mordain. You will not run down corridors. You will not go to chase cats." "I wasn't going to," she said too quickly. "Today." He almost smiled and let it come only halfway. He stood and rested his hand on her head. He felt the wiry hair, the hot skull, the stubbornness that was not a fault but a flame. "Are you afraid?" he asked, because it was too much to expect her to say so without help. She thought for a moment. "No," she said, then frowned. "A little," she admitted, surprising him less than she thought she would. "But not very." "That is enough," he said. "Only fools are never afraid." She tucked that away somewhere and he could see her decide that she had always agreed with it. "Will there be swords?" she asked. "There are always swords," he said. "But I hope there will be few this day." She nodded as if he had offered her a choice of flavors and she had decided to trust him to choose. When she left, she ran the last 2 steps to the door because the world had corners in it, and even on days when she was not to run, she could not help wanting to. He felt older by the time he reached the council chamber. The air in there had a certain damp weight that it took from old tapestries and whispers. Maester Pycelle was already there, breathing as if his own breath had become a thing he had to carry around and was complaining of its weight. Littlefinger arrived next, smooth as polished wood, and smiled in a way that made Eddard think of hidden nails. Varys came with a mild warmth, as if he had been standing near ovens and had brought some of it in with him to share. Renly took his chair with a grace that said it had been waiting for him rather than the other way around. Ser Barristan entered last, in white and steel and the calm of a man who had learned how to carry his own conscience without showing its weight. Eddard laid the parchment with the wax seal on the table. "The Queen is in secure apartments," he said without preamble. "Her children with her. The watch holds the gates. The hand holds the bridge. This day we will send for Lord Stannis as the late king's lawful heir. Until he arrives, I act as protector." Pycelle pressed his fingers together and peered at them as if expecting to see wisdom appear there. "This is a grave step, my lord hand," he said, sucking at the words until they came out a little aged. "Her grace will not take it kindly. There are customs." "There is law," Renly said crisply, "and there are knives. Lady Cersei has collected the latter. We have taken her knives away. Now we will fetch the law." Littlefinger looked delighted, the way a man does when a game has taken an unexpected turn that might yet be made to profit him. "And when Lord Stannis arrives," he said lightly, toying with a ring and not looking at anyone in particular, "do we suppose the people will cheer? He is as beloved of the small folk as..." He paused. As taxes, I think. The small folk will cheer bread, Varys said in his unthreatening murmur. They will cheer peace. They will cheer not being set on fire when they stand too close to lords with opinions. They will cheer what keeps their children alive. If Lord Stannis can be made to understand that, Lord Stannis understands duty, Barristan said, and something like approval crept into his voice despite himself. He will keep order. He will keep oaths. He will keep count, Littlefinger offered, smiling. I will send letters to the lords of the city, Eddard said, turning the play of voices to their purpose with a patience that had not come easily to him. They will attend in the throne room before midday. In the meantime, the queen will be treated with due honor. No man will insult her. Renly's mouth quirked. And who, dear brother Hand, will instruct her to return the favor? I will speak with her, Eddard said. He did so mid-morning. He went alone but for one guard who waited outside the door and a boy with a tray of fruit who slipped in at the same time and was presently dismissed by Cersei with a glance sharp enough to cut his heel cords. The apartments they had given her were airy and bright. Cersei had made them hers in the hours since night as if she had paced them into submission. She stood by the window, looking not at the garden but at the white stone beyond it, the way it gleamed unbeautifully in the sun. She did not turn until he was halfway across the room. I have played with knives, she said without greeting. You have given me a dull room for my toys. Your toys are safe in your son's hands, he said. He came to a stop where he could see her face without peering into the sun behind her. I do not think you wish to play with them today. She laughed once, very small and real, like the sound of something breaking underfoot that you had not expected to be fragile. You do not know what I wish. She looked him over with a painter's seriousness. You would have been a good villain, Eddard Stark, if you had not had such a taste for justice. Villains without humor are the most dangerous. We cannot distract them. You have your children. You have your honor if you wish to keep it. My honor. She pronounced the word as if it were a foreign dish someone had insisted she try. Is that what you call watching while men who hate me decide which miserable Baratheon will take what my son was promised? No promise was ever made to him, Eddard said. He felt himself harden as a man does when he expects blows. You made it to yourself. She moved closer, the silk of her gown making a private weather of its own. You think I do not love him, she said. That is because you think you know what love looks like and it does not wear my face. Am I a poor mother? Eddard? Am I cruel? Perhaps I am, but you are crueler because you imagine that. Cruelty is not required of you. I will keep him safe, Eddard said. All of them. He did not look away. You will keep them safe until Stannis comes, she said. And then he will do as he likes with them because law, because oaths, because the sweet cloudy things men like to say to make the world seem like a temple. He will keep count, as that little man said. Do you think the count will be in my favor? In Joffrey's? In my daughter's? She is innocent to a degree that would be touching if it were not pathetic. Stannis is not a butcher, he said, and believed it because he had to. He is hard, but he will not make war on children. The look she gave him then was old, older than the city, older than gods. Hard men make the worst guardians of soft things, she said. They break without knowing. They call it fate. He thought of the way Stannis's mouth set like a coffer's lid. He thought of the boy with the cat. I will not leave the decision to him, he said. I will not let him be cruel. Ah, she murmured. We have reached the part where you promised to make everything right. I wondered how long you would take. You were always late to court, Lord Stark. Not to the weirwood, I suppose, but to court, always late. She made a small dismissive motion with her hand. Go, write your letters to your gray men. Smell your own virtue. See if it keeps you warm tonight when the city learns that its queen was led from her bed like a cheating servant. You will be treated with honor, he said. Your comfort is mine to see to. How gallant, she said and turned back to the window. Send me a harpist if you are so moved to gallantry. I find I like music when it is well played. It helps me think. He left without answering that. Outside in the corridor, Renly waited. casual as a cat in the sun. "How does our lady lioness?" he inquired lazily. "Sharp," Eddard said, "as she has cause to be." "Her claws are clipped," Renly said. "For the moment." He linked his fingers behind his back and stretched. "Shall we hear 1,000 men who believe themselves important talk about why they should be asked to be more important than that?" They went to the throne room, and it filled with lords and the chaff that blows in with lords, men keeping company with their own importance like a mistress. The light through the high windows was a hard white that made dust dance like snow. The Iron Throne sat, piled and unpleasant, a ridiculous monument to something that had murdered good sense in any man who looked at it too long. Eddard did not sit in it. He sat in a chair moved to the foot of the dais, the better to remind himself that some seats, once taken, never release you clean. The lords came in and bowed and murmured. They recomposed their faces as they took in the sight of gold cloaks at the doors and of Renly and Barristan speaking quietly together, and of Littlefinger smiling at no one, and of Varys unthreatening and unmovable, and of the hand's chair placed where it was. They smelled the air the way hounds do, sniffing for danger, for meat. Eddard spoke. He spoke of Robert's will. He spoke of Stannis at Dragonstone. He spoke of the law that said what it said no matter how one looked at it. He spoke of the need for quiet and order and for the safety of the royal family. He spoke of wars that had already begun elsewhere, of riders from the Riverlands bringing tales of Lannister fires and broken men, and a boy called Tully, who had been carried screaming from a burned mill by a stranger and deposited into a cart like so many other small bright things ruined by men who made emblems of themselves so they would not have to think of what they did. He did not speak of what he had learned from a book of genealogies. He did not speak of hair that grew like crow's feathers on all Baratheons for 100 years, nor of how some things show themselves and some you have to admit to yourself out loud or they go on pretending not to exist within you. There was time enough to speak that, if it served. He needed the lords to walk with him across a narrow bridge first, and no one wants to be told that the rails are made from their neighbor's bones as he steps onto it. The lords murmured back. They made shapes of argument. Some invoked the dead. Some invoked gold. Some invoked the people as if any of them had ever loved the people except as a chorus to applaud their own songs. Lord Giles coughed until everyone was forced to consider him alive. Lord Slint stood at the back with a face that had learned how to be blank through practice rather than nature, and the blankness sifted now and then to let a calculation slip out. Lord Peter Baelish spoke when it would do him most good and least harm. "It is simple enough," he said, as if the thing in front of them were a knot he intended to cut because it offended him. "We send for Lord Stannis. We prepare to receive him. We ensure the peace of the city. We ensure the Queen's comfort. We become unremarkable until a man who wishes to remark on everything arrives. Then we remark upon his remarking." It got a ripple of laughter because men like to laugh when they are not sure if they should be counting their money. Eddard inclined his head because an ally is sometimes a laugh that lands in the right place. Varys made a very small approving sound. Pycelle began a speech about the ancient dignity of offices that made even his own breath try to escape the room. Toward midday the doors opened and someone announced Ser Jaime Lannister's name as if it were a storm and they were warning ships. Eddard's heart stopped and started. He lifted his hand and found it had gone cold. But it was a messenger only, dusty and bent, with a lion on his tabard that had learned the trick of looking dangerous even when its paint was flaking. The message was not words so much as a shape of world that came with them. The Kingslayer was at large in the Riverlands, his banners moving swift and purposeful, his riders taking hold of roads like men taking hold of wrists. Lord Tywin had called his levies. Siege towers grew along the Green Fork like mushrooms after rain. Lord Beric Dondarrion had ridden out at the king's command weeks before and had found himself now opposed to more than mere fire. Men in the throne room felt the shape of this arrival settle on their shoulders like a yoke. The Lannister war had a weight that the Lannister name alone did not fully convey. For all his beauty and banter, Jaime had always smelled of steel. For all its gold, Casterly Rock had always smelled of mines. "We will need to send envoys," Renly said. He did not look at Eddard. "We will need to send men to keep the fords. We will need to be one thing at a time," Eddard murmured. and the words were not for anyone. They were for himself, a man with 2 hands trying to carry 3 breakable pots. When the court rotted away finally like a loaf left too long in a damp cupboard, leaving crumbs of those who did not know where else to go, Eddard returned to his solar and found a small stack of letters that had been born in the hours he had been away. One was from his wife. It had come earlier by raven and then by boy and then by a guard and then by a maid, and the words had traveled all that way without losing any of their plainness. She spoke of Bran's waking, of his stillness, of his strange changes that had come like a different season. She spoke of the road north, of the silent nights that were not silent because they were full of her absence. She spoke of Tyrion Lannister's capture at the crossroads and of the fear that had followed that choice down the hill like a rolled barrel that now could not be called back up no matter how strong a man one sent to fetch it. He laid the letter down and pressed his fingers to his eyes until lights bloomed. He heard the city in that darkness. The cry of a hawker advertising small fishes, the caw of a crow that had no business being within the walls, the sound of a carpenter's hammer that he imagined precise and patient. He heard Arya laugh in some hallway as if she had found an ally where none should be, and he heard Sansa weeping quietly through a wall of air because tears make no sound unless you grant them that wish. His mouth tasted of wax and honey again, and he could taste neither. They brought him Cersei's requested harpist in the afternoon to approve, and he laughed in spite of himself, then stopped because it felt like a betrayal of something he could not name. He sent the man along with a warning to keep his music light. He sent a note to the kitchens. He sent a guard to tell the Queen's ladies to attend her, but only the 2 he named, women who had husbands who could be persuaded by means that did not involve blades. Before supper a boy brushed in with a face like damp paper. "My lord," he said, "the Queen's lady requests to speak with you, not the Queen." "The Lady Tanda's girl." He groped a name. Lollies. Lollies came with her hands folded and her eyes cast down. She smelled of roses and fear. "Please, my lord," she whispered, and Eddard leaned forward and wished he were speaking to anyone else because this girl's fear was a small weak animal that would simply die if the world raised its voice. "Her Grace. The Queen wishes to know if her brother will be harmed when he comes to claim her. She says he will come. She requests. She asks you to say the truth." "I do not lie," Eddard said. He had to say it to himself sometimes to make it remain true, and he did not think Lollies would be the one to call him on it. "Ser Jaime has made war already. If he comes with swords, we will meet him with swords. If he comes alone, he will be treated as befits his name and crimes." Lollies' eyes had gone vague at crimes and then snapped into focus at swords. "Thank you," she said, meaning nothing by it but the wish to leave. She bobbed and fled. He sat through a supper he could not later remember the contents of, only that there were small birds and a pie whose crust was too fine for its filling, and that Peter watched him over the rim of a silver cup as if he were considering where best to place the next coin on a game he played with himself. Varys told a gentle, nonsense story about a brewer who had taught his cat to knock over jars on command, and how the cat had then invented commerce on its own by exchanging mice for jars it wanted knocked. Pycelle fell asleep in his soup and then started awake with a horrific snort and pretended nothing had occurred. Renly spoke of horses, and of a man from the Stormlands who shod them so quickly you could not count the nails before he was done. Barristan ate with precise motions and left early, but not before saying to Eddard in a low voice that he would come in the morning to speak alone. "And the Queen?" Renly asked as they stood in a courtyard after and looked up at stars that the southern air made seem both near and without any coldness. "Has she called you a coward yet for not letting her make a scene?" "Not yet," Eddard said. "She will," Renly observed. "It is one of her sharpest weapons. She likes to lodge it under a man's rib where it can trouble his breath. Do not pull it out yourself. Let her." He slept better that night because he had exhausted even his worry. Dawn came under a gray veil and lifted it slowly as if it were shy. He woke to noise, but not the noise he had feared. Carts creaking, ordinaries setting up their wares, the regular thud of the city's heartbeat. A girl sang below a window in a voice like a reed. Somewhere someone was hammering something into place as if they had decided something would be made that day no matter what the lords did. Barristan came early. They spoke standing because to sit would have made it too intimate. The old knight looked at the way Eddard's sword belt hung and nodded with approval at the neatness of its buckle, as if neatness indicated a mind that could be trusted. "Yeah. V served 3 kings," he said without preamble. "I have kept oaths longer than other men have kept their wives. I will not break them, but I will say this. If Lord Stannis comes, I will serve him. If the boy is put upon the throne by sleight, I will not stay to see it." Eddard held his gaze. "I will not ask you to break your oath," he said. "I will ask you to keep it to the realm rather than to a name." Barristan's mouth did something that was not quite a smile. "Men find it easier to keep it to a name," he said. "Names do not cry. Names do not bleed. The realm, Lord Stark, the realm is a thing so large that it is often used to excuse many small things. However," he paused, "I will keep order here until Lord Stannis comes. And I will hope you are right about him." "Thank you," Eddard said. "And Barristan, no one is to harm the queen. Not a hand, not a word." "That is well," the old man said. "I do not love her. I do not hate her. I will not permit others to take their pleasure on her person because they cannot take it on her politics." He touched his breastplate lightly. "I will remind Ser Boros of the fine parts of his oath." The morning wore on and the smell of baking bread came up from the kitchens like a promise. It was broken by a shout at the lower gate. A high panicked pealing like a bell with an injury. Men moved and the hush that followed was loud. Eddard went to the wall walk and looked down into a small knot of commotion that had coalesced around a rider in Lannister red, whose horse was white with sweat and whose face was gray with the dust of the road. The rider held something high at first and then brought it down as if he had realized that waving a letter in the air was an unwise thing in a court where many hands might be tempted to reach for it. They fetched him up, and the letter and the dust. He stood before Eddard with the boldness of a man who has run too far to remember to be afraid. He bowed and made a mess of it. "My lord hand," he panted. "From Lord Tywin Lannister." He swallowed, coughed, swallowed again. "He demands the queen and the prince be released into his custody at once." He swallowed yet again as if each swallow might be his last. "He says if they are not, he will turn the Riverlands into a pyre and dance upon the ashes. He says his men will be at the city gates within a fortnight. He says there is no king in King's Landing when a lion roars. A fortnight makes a great many demands on roads that do not love soldiers," Renly said dryly. He had appeared as if the letter had called him up. "But let us grant that lions roar." He lifted his brows at Eddard. "Do we roar back?" "We send an answer," Eddard said. "We say that the queen is the king's mother and is being treated with honor and care. We say the prince is safe. We say that Lord Stannis has been called. We say that no lion has the right to claim a throne that is not his, not even by roar." Littlefinger leaned against a pillar as if he were tired and had discovered that pillars were good friends if one did not ask them for conversation. "We might also consider sending him a present," he suggested, voice light. "A small one, promise. Something to keep him combing the mane rather than the roads." "Promises," Varys said, "are dearer than gold and cheaper than bread." "We will not bargain with hostages," Eddard said. He felt the words as they settled, heavy and without polish. He did not give himself the luxury of thinking what bargains might one day be forced into his hands. Afternoons stretched like a cat in warm sun. Men came and went and said the sort of things men say when they are afraid to say that they are afraid. The sky was a blue that would have made Sansa think of eyes and cloth, and Arya think of climbing. Cersei sent him a carved chess piece, a queen with a lion's mouth. No note accompanied it. He put it on the edge of his desk and left it there like a question he would not yet answer. Toward evening, a soft knock came. When he called, it opened and let in someone he had not expected to see that day. Sandor Clegane, without his helmet, hair pressed damply at his temples, mouth pursed into a line that might have been preface or apology. He stood just inside the door until Eddard gestured him in. The Hound looked around the room with the sneer of a man who has seen too many rooms like it to be impressed by this particular arrangement of wood and stone and status. "What do you want, sir?" Eddard asked, omitting the honorific deliberately and watching the man not react to its absence. "To tell you," Sandor said, "that the boy tried to get a knife off a guard." He grunted. "The prince. He thinks if he has a knife then he is a man." "Did he hurt anyone?" Eddard asked. "Only himself," Sandor said, as if that were a thing to be sneered at. "He cut his finger. His mother made a scene of it." I laughed. She did not like that. He met Eddard's gaze then. "He will make trouble because he likes the feeling of saying a thing and having men jump. He cannot have that feeling here, so he will invent other feelings. If you're not an idiot, you'll move the knives farther from his bed." "I will," Eddard said. "Thank you." The hound shrugged. "I do not thank you." He turned to go, then paused, half his face in shadow like a man telling secrets to his own scar. "If you're going to be a fool, Stark, be the kind of fool that keeps heads on children's shoulders. There are other kinds. I've seen too many. I will try to be that kind," Eddard said. They looked at each other for a moment with the shared contempt of two different sorts of honesty. Then Sandor left, and his boots thudded down the hall like an argument with the floor. Night slid in again, unashamed and unremarkable, as if nothing had changed and everything had. Eddard stood at the window with the city humming beneath him and thought of ravens on dark wings, and of a hard-faced man in a castle at sea reading a letter and set. Angie his jaw. He thought of a boy in the Riverlands who had once cut down a man for his father and had discovered both pride and terror living in the same house afterward. He thought of the north. He thought of snow. In the Queen's quarters, Cersei stood with her hands on the sill and looked out at the same city and thought of lions, of gold, and of a father who had taught her that people are coins and one must learn to spend them without counting the faces on them, only the shine and the heft. She thought of her children sleeping in separate rooms which had been arranged to feel separate no matter how one lit the lamps. She thought of her brother, across a road, across a river, across a bridge he would burn if he needed to, riding with his face set in that peculiar joyful seriousness he had only ever shown when he was going to risk his life. She thought, "Come quickly." She thought, "We will hurt them and then we will hurt them more if they make me say please." In the barracks of the Gold Cloaks, Janos Slint sat with a plate of meat he had not eaten and a cup he had tasted but not drained, and counted in his head the things that could be weighed and those that could not. In the White Sword Tower, Barristan polished his blade with motions that were half prayer and half memory. In a small room near the kitchens, Arya Stark lay awake and smiled to herself in the dark because she had brought a wooden sword to bed despite promises, and she had put it under her pillow where it made a hard long ridge that she liked the feel of against her ear. In another room, Sansa cried into a pillow so that no one would hear and told herself it was for the Queen, for the Prince, for the way songs go wrong when people insist on singing other words to the music. Past midnight, Varys moved as softly as a footstep in snow. He slipped through a door men forgot to notice and into a corridor that had never been meant for lords. He listened to water. He listened to stone. He listened to his own breathing because it often told him what he had missed. He carried nothing and everything with him. The second morning came with threats like dew. Letters arrived. The Tyrells sent word that they were pleased to hear of the Queen's health and would be more pleased to send a cartload of pears to prove their care. The Martells did not send word, which was their way of saying they had read every word and then placed the letter beneath a weight. Lord Stannis's raven came in late, harsh light. Its shadow crossed the hand's desk and made the direwolf on the seal look as if it had stood up and walked. The letter within was like the man. Spare, precise, refusing even the pretense of flattery. He would come, it said, to claim what was lawfully his. He would expect to be obeyed. He would expect to be resisted. He would bring justice, and justice was a thing that could be counted. Eddard held the letter for a long time. He felt the city around him as a thing that would break in one place if he held too tightly in another. He felt the Lannisters massing at the edges like thunder. He felt Renly's bright particular impatience like a spark in dry straw, and the way the spark might leap if a wind came. He felt his own heart like a drum that had learned too many rhythms. At noon in the small courtyard outside the Queen's rooms, Cersei and he met again by chance or by appointment one could plausibly deny later. There were roses. A bee moved between them, heavy with the brief foolishness of spring. She wore green, softer than emerald, deep as moss. He could see a faint line of sleeplessness at the corner of her mouth, a smudge under her eye that no one else would be bold enough to look at. "My lord," she said. "My lady." They stood a little apart, as if the space between them were a person who had asked to hear what would be said. "I have had a letter from Dragonstone," he said. "Lord Stannis comes." Her mouth moved in something almost like tenderness. "My brother will come faster," she said. "He should not," came out like a wish one makes to the sea. "He will. Then you must keep him from it." "I keep nothing from him but the kindness of the world," she said. "Do you keep your wife from making mistakes? Do your daughters obey your bids to be safe? We women have 1,000 small powers. None of them is to stop a man from thinking himself right." He had no answer to that. He had only the sense of standing in a season that could not decide which it was, and so was both blossom and rot. In the yard beyond, a trainer shouted at lads with wooden blades, and the sound of it rang like something cheerful. Sansa crossed the far end of the yard with Septa Mordain, her face set into a serenity that took skill to wear. Arya darted a moment behind a pillar and then back out, scolded without heat by the Septa. Cersei watched them with an expression Eddard could not name. It was something like hunger and something like reluctance, and beneath it a calculation that never rested. "Your girls," she said. "My girls," he said. "They have not yet learned to harden their faces," she said. "Do not teach them. Better not to. Better to leave them soft and hurt them than to make them hard and hurt the world." "You think that is what I have done to my sons," he said. "I think the world did it to them," she said. "And I helped because I could not think what else to do." He turned to go. She spoke again very quietly. "If he comes," she said, "your Stannis, and says that my children are not what I say they are, if he says it in that dry voice as if he were reciting a list of taxes, what will you do, Eddard Stark? Will you let him say it? Will you let the city shout it? Will you let them look at my daughter with that knowledge in their mouths and not protect her from the taste?" He closed his eyes and saw two paths, both narrow, both treacherous, and no path between. He opened them and said, "I will protect your children." "You cannot," she said, and he. Our smile was terrible with its truth. "No one can. But if you try, I will believe that you meant it." By late afternoon, a report came from the Riverlands that turned the air in the chamber to iron. Jaime had crossed a ford in the night, cutting down the men Lord Vance had left to watch it. He moved like a needle through cloth, neat, stitching destruction to itself in a fine, even seam. A Lannister banner had been seen near Derry. A mill had burned. A septon had been hanged. The message carried numbers and fear. It asked for help in the language of men who pretend they are asking for a cart to move hay. Eddard sent riders with orders that sounded like prayer. He spoke with Varys about stores of grain and powder. He spoke with Renly about gates. He spoke with Barristan about the distribution of watch rotations, about which men would not tire when asked not to tire, about who among the gold cloaks could be asked to remember that they had sworn to something other than their own day's comfort. The sun slid down a wall and went out. He stood in shadow and did not move into the lamplight just yet. He listened to the city. He could tell when a city held its breath. This one was holding and would not be able to forever. He thought of the North's long winters and the way people there learned to breathe lightly for months at a time. This city had never learned that. It would gasp and cry and act. He must be ready when it did. In a corner of the Queen's rooms, Joffrey sat and wrapped and unwrapped a strip of linen around his cut finger until it grew dirty. He thought of knives and of the way men had not run when he had told them to. He thought of the hound's mouth and wanted to order it cut off because he hated it. He thought of Sansa's eyes and decided that he did not care if she cried. He thought of his uncle and imagined the way the city would sound when horses filled it, when boots rang in streets. He thought of the throne and of the stories told of men who sat in it, and he imagined himself as those men and then did not like that the imagined men did not have his face. Myrcella read by lamplight, lips moving a little, a small crease between her brows. She would be kind. Eddard thought when he passed the door later. This one would be kind if the world let her. He did not know whether the world ever let anyone be what they might have been. Tommen slept with a little purr, and the cat on his pillow opened one eye to regard Eddard, then closed it again because the world was largely of no interest to a creature who expected to be fed and was always fed. Eddard felt a particular anger at that and laughed at himself for it as he went back down the corridor. He had learned to be angry at many small things in the last days. It made him feel more human, not less. That night rain came, soft at first, an indecision on the air that slowly turned into a steadiness. The Red Keep wore it like an old well-washed cloak. The city gleamed, dogs barked. Somewhere a pot cracked with the sudden change in temperature and a woman swore, then laughed at herself. The rain smelled of the sea laid over the dust of too many weeks. Eddard slept, woke, slept, and dreamed of Bran climbing again, light as a squirrel, and then falling not to ground but into a story he could not see the end of. In the morning, the raven came from the eyrie with news that turned all of his careful arrangements like a chessboard someone had tipped and felt all the pieces tumble together at the bottom of the box. Tyrion Lannister had demanded trial by combat and won it with a Sellsword whose name read like something made up to remove all weight from it. Littlefinger smiled when the letter was read. A small smile to himself, for himself. Varys folded his hands and looked down at them until the silence had lasted a respectful amount of time. "Your lady wife," Renly said to Eddard, half sympathetic, half impressed, "has made the game too interesting. She did what she thought was right," Eddard said, though he felt the pinch of it like new boots. "And now we will do what we must." He wrote to Catelyn with a difference in his hand that only he would have noted. He wrote to Robb and told him to keep his men near and not to be provoked. He wrote to Winterfell's steward about harvests. He wrote to the stable master about the disposition of the Hand's horses. He wrote so many letters that the boys in the rookery began to look at him with a certain superstition, as if the man who wrote had a power over the birds that he himself might not know. He went to the Queen's apartments once more and stood by the garden and smelled wet roses and the faint ash smell the rain had woken from the stones. Cersei came out and did not pretend to be surprised. They stood again like two witnesses at a marriage neither had wanted. "Your brother has won his life," Eddard said. "He may come in a capacity that does not shame him, and we will treat him as such if he does. Tell him that." "I will tell him that if I wish him to laugh," she said. "He will come in the capacity that pleasures him. You do not know him. You do not know any of us. The North imagines it knows how we are made because it knows how snow falls. You imagine the North is one thing," he said. "You imagine everyone not yourself is one thing." He did not say it unkindly. He did not know how to say it kindly. "We are all many things." He looked at her. "Even you." She considered that and gave him a look he could not place. "If I am many things," she said, "then count me in your reckoning when it comes time to spend. Do not write me as one. When the day comes," and you could see it as she said it, not yet on the horizon but climbing, "give me a thing I can do besides watch." He did not promise. He could not. He held her gaze until she looked away because she did not wish to be seen doing that. When she had gone, he stood a long while and listened to rain whispering in leaves. He tried to hear Winterfell in it. He tried to hear Catelyn's voice in it. He tried to hear Robert's laughter and heard instead the soft tread of feet, the kind that men who do not want to be heard invent when they are boys. He turned and saw Littlefinger. "You do walk too softly," Eddard said, not smiling. "I find it helps conversations," Peter Baelish said, and looked at the wet roses and then at Eddard as if comparing two sorts of stubbornness he did not much like. "I bring you a possibility. You bring me possibilities as a peddler brings charms," Eddard said. "If I buy one, it will turn my luck." "It might," Littlefinger said, smiling. "You made the clever choice last night. It did not fit you, the cleverness, but it suited the moment. I bring you another. Make peace with the Queen." "We have peace," Eddard said, and knew how foolish that sounded in a city that could feel the Lannister steps on its roads. "Make true peace," Littlefinger said. "Send for Stannis if you must. Seat him. but marry your girl to the prince. Make your boy warden of the north with the king's blessing. Put a bit in Lord Tywin's mouth. He is not easily bit, but he has grandchildren, and men with grandchildren learn to bite back only when they must. You see, as a peddler's charm, it shines. And then, Littlefinger said pleasantly, you are safe. The South will quarrel with itself. Lord Renly will decide he is prettier as a king in some looking-glass he keeps for that purpose. Lord Stannis will grind his teeth and count his breads and waters and be content that at least the sums add up. Lord Tywin will move men on maps and call it a life. And you will be safe in your winter palace with your lady and your memories. And when it is summer, you will be safe in your summer melancholy. You will die one day and be buried in stone with a wolf on you, and your children will be safe. Safety, Lord Stark. I sell it to you now at a price you can afford. Eddard looked at him for a long time. He thought of Cersei saying he was cruel for his choices. He thought of Littlefinger saying he could be safe. He thought of words like safe and cruel and law and love and how they slid around when you tried to nail them to any floor. He thought of his father and brother dead because some men had thought they would buy safety and found that what they had paid for was quiet. And quiet, it turned out, was only the sound of a trap closing. You forget Stannis, he said delicately. In your pretty sums. On the contrary, Littlefinger said, Stannis is the sum. He will do what he does. I tell you what you can do around him. And if he will not do as you wish, you can still be safe. Safety is a small god, Lord Stark. He asks very little and returns in kind. Worship him and you will not be happy, but you will be whole. Do you know what happiness is? It is not required. I will not sell my daughters, Eddard said. He made the words flat so that they could not be decorated later by anyone. Not for safety, not for anything. Littlefinger sighed as if at a child who insists on playing with sticks when there are toys in the room. You are an honest man, he said. It is why Robert liked you. It is why the Queen hates you. It is why you will lose. Then I will lose, Eddard said. Littlefinger's smile slid away like a coin falling in a drain. For a heartbeat his face was something else entirely. Then he put it back on. As you will. I will make arrangements for you to have what you need to lose with dignity. I am very good at dignity. He left Eddard with his reign. The day lengthened and shortened, as all days did, and the city began to murmur in a different key. There are days when news arrives as if on horseback. There are days when it swims in through wells and comes up in buckets. By evening men knew that the Queen was confined, and women knew and began to speak in their own soft market language about a lady who had been led through a door at night and what that might mean, and children knew, and told each other stories involving secret passages and oaths and a boy king who had grown a beard overnight and cut off a man's head because he had looked at him. The stories were not accurate. Accuracy is a regard that stories do not always return. At supper the hand ate alone. He chewed and swallowed and could not have said what. He drank water because wine would have made him generous, and he could not afford generosity with his own thoughts. He went to the balcony before he was done and watched the city's lanterns begin to bloom. He put his hands on the stone and felt its heat from the day still in it. He thought of sending Sansa north. He thought of sending Arya. He thought of doing so at once and then thought of the Queen's face if he did and of the river of decisions that would open then. He thought of Catelyn, and of the road between them, and of how it bent according to the needs of men who had made no vows to their happiness. He went to bed with a note written in a hand he did not know. It had been slipped under his door, and its letters scuttled like bugs. It said simply, "The little birds have heard that the lion has found a gate." He slept badly again. He woke before the dawn and went to the wall. Fog had come up from the river and laid its trust upon the city, and the world was a bowl of milk. He stood a long time and waited for something he did not know the shape of to appear from that whiteness. When it did, it came like a shape out of a story a child tells, and you do not know whether to scold him or give him a sweet for inventiveness. A boat, small, slipping near the base of the wall where water lapped its slime, low with weight and quiet with skill. Men moved in it with the economy of those who had done this before. They passed into a place where stones had once fallen and a small gap had been made, and then gone, and the stones had been piled back by men who had been careless in their diligence. The boat slid into T. He gaped and vanished into the keep's underbelly. Eddard did not shout. He did not wave. He stood very still and let the fog move over his face. He turned and walked quietly to the stairs. He went down with a haste he did not show. At the bottom he found a guardsman and told him to fetch Ser Barristan. He found Renly and told him where to set his men. He went to the queen's rooms and found the hound already there, helmet on, eyes cold and amused, as if the world had offered him an interesting thing to bite and he was deciding where to begin. "What do you say now, Stark?" Sandor asked, and his laughter had no warmth in it. "Lions breed fast. It seems they swim as well." He looked at Joffrey, who stood as if he was about to be written into a great song and was half afraid it would not rhyme. He looked at Cersei, who stood as if she had just remembered a word she had been searching for all day. He looked at Myrcella, who stood because her mother did, and Tommen, who stood because his sister had tugged his sleeve. He looked at the door because that was where whatever would happen next would happen. Renly's men did not react as softly as fog. They took their places with the soft clatter of reality. Barristan came with 2 white cloaks and a quiet that could be felt at the edge of the skin. Varys arrived without breathlessness and with a napkin still in his hand, as if he had been interrupted in breakfast and had brought the interruption with him as an alibi. Littlefinger came smiling, as if he had been roused from a pleasant dream and intended to find it again if left alone. The boat's men had slipped into the keep like rain into a crack. Now they were within, and the crack widened. Eddard drew breath to order the corridor held, and a sound interrupted him. Metal on stone, a careless tap, the sort of small announcement a man makes to be sure you know he is not being stealthy because he finds stealth insulting. Jaime Lannister came into the corridor in gold and white and something like joy. His hair was unbound. His mouth was that of a man who has just arrived at a feast he suspects will be better than anyone has promised him. He raised his hand not in greeting but because it pleased him to be looked at. Men behind him shifted, glittered, breathed. The corridor took a breath with them. "Brother," Cersei said, the first warmth in days in her voice, quick and real. "You are late." Jaime's glance flicked to her and away with that economy he practiced with love, acknowledging it without being caught by it. His eyes rested on Eddard. "Lord Stark," he said, "you have made my days interesting. How shall we make yours?" Eddard stepped forward into the little space between 2 kinds of disaster. He kept his voice plain. "You will lay down your arms," he said. "You will come into custody. You will be treated honorably." Jaime laughed, easy and pleased. "I will," he agreed cheerfully, "do none of those things." He glanced toward Joffrey, and there was a look there Eddard could not parse at all, half crooked, like a joke told at a funeral. He glanced toward Cersei. He glanced toward Renly. He glanced toward Barristan, and his smile changed as if meeting an old comrade. "Ser Barristan," he said, respectful in a way that had actual respect in it. "May I pass?" "You may not," Barristan said. Jaime inclined his head as if that were the answer he had expected. The fog was still outside and had found the cracks under the window and sent its careful fingers in to lay a moistness on the skin. It smelled faintly of the river with its dead and its honest filth. Eddard felt it and thought. "I am awake," he thought. "This is where one part of the story ends and another begins." He thought, "Hold." He raised his hand. Men shifted, and the world, which had weighted threads taut over 2 days, began to move.